Have you ever felt your world collapse in an instant, as if invisible hands shattered the dreams you spent years building? Images of hope replaced by fear, and the walls you thought were strong crumbling into dust? This is not just a story, it's a raw confession, a journey through a woman's darkest storms towards a future she never expected. Welcome, friends. Before we dive into the depths of Victoria's story, a tale of heartbreak, betrayal, and triumph, I invite you to subscribe and join our family of stories that matter. Victoria's life had always been marked by resilience. Raised in a modest neighborhood, she grew up believing that love was stronger than any adversity. She poured her heart into every task, every relationship, every moment. When she met Chris B.O., his gentle eyes and humble nature drew her in, and she became his unwavering support. But even steadfast devotion can be shaken by life's cruel twists. It happened in the echoing halls of a local hospital. The air was thick with anticipation, but suddenly, Chris's anguished cry pierced the corridor, freezing everyone in their tracks. He fell to his knees, his hands trembling, and his eyes red with tears that spoke of inconsolable loss. Children clung to their mothers. Nurses paused their duties, sensing something more than a medical emergency, a heartbreak unraveling before their eyes. This was the second miscarriage for Victoria in just 3 years. Every hope, every prayer for a child was dashed in a moment, leaving Chris desperate and broken. 2 nurses approached, their voices soft, urging Chris to gather himself. "Let's step inside, sir," one murmured, guiding him towards answers neither he nor Victoria wanted to hear. Inside the sterile office, Chris waited, every muscle tense, dreading another blow no man should have to endure. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? The chief physician, a sage of many seasons, regarded Chris with genuine compassion. "Mr. B.O.," he began gently, "the pain you feel now is unimaginable. But your wife has been carrying far more than just physical burdens. Victoria's body, overworked and overwhelmed, could not withstand the pressure." Yes, loss wasn't fate. It was a signal. Chris never expected such words. His shock was palpable. "Stress? But how, doctor?" he asked, his voice trembling between disbelief and guilt. The doctor's memory flashed to Victoria's most recent visit. "Her cervix was opening too soon," he said gravely. "I warned her. No lifting, no stress, no pressure. She never shared these risks with you." Chris reeled backward, the betrayal twisting inside him. Why hadn't she told him? In his mind, memories flipped like old photographs. Victoria, hiding her pain, pushing herself to help him while he struggled in an unstable job. He recalled the countless nights she worked late, never complaining, never asking for more than his companionship. "If only I knew," Chris whispered, his voice breaking. The tears flowed anew. The agony of losing a second child sliced through Chris like ice. All his dreams of fatherhood, of family, seemed cruelly out of reach. The doctor's words, though laced with empathy, hung heavy in the air. Victoria had tried to carry 2 lifetimes of pain alone, and both had suffered for it. Chris shuffled toward Victoria's ward with leaden feet. Every step was a silent apology, every breath drawn with regret. When he entered, he found Victoria wrapped in her own torment, tears streaming down her cheeks. She repeated, almost in a trance, "It's my fault, all my fault." The room felt cold and hollow, filled only by the sound of grief. Chris rushed to her side. "No, babe. Please, don't say that," he pleaded, holding her hand tightly. "You couldn't have stopped this. It's not your fault." But trauma runs deep, and words sometimes sound empty against the avalanche of sorrow. Victoria turned away, burying her face in the pillow, ashamed. "I should have told you. I should have rested. I killed our baby," she repeated, her voice choked with guilt. Chris tried to reassure her, his voice low, his heart in pieces. "God knows why this has happened. Don't carry what you can't bear alone." Tears blended on their joined hands, 2 broken hearts searching for comfort amid devastation. Gradually, Victoria's sobs lessened, exhaustion taking over. After 2 days, Victoria was released from the hospital. As she settled at home, still haunted by the echo of loss, Chris made a solemn vow. No more stress, no more sacrifices that cost them everything. He would bear the burden. He would become her protector. Outside their fragile home, the world demanded more than love. It demanded survival. Chris hustled through the bustling city streets, his worn file always tucked under his arm. He submitted proposals to construction companies, chased contracts, and prayed for a breakthrough. Money was tight, jobs scarce. Some days he served food at the neighborhood restaurant, hoping to scrounge enough for rent and groceries. Determined never to let Victoria suffer again, Chris redoubled his efforts. But pain leaves marks unseen by others. Victoria's body began changing after the second loss. Hormonal fluctuations and persistent depression transformed her physically and emotionally. She withdrew from the world, seeking solace only in food. Meals became her anchor, her way to dull the heartbreak when everything else seemed impossible. Day by day, Victoria's figure shifted. Sadness settled on her face, and neighbors started to whisper. "Look at Victoria," some tittered. "She's turned into a wrestler since her miscarriage." But Victoria, lost inside herself, barely heard them. Eating was her only relief, her retreat from a reality too cruel to face. One evening, Chris returned exhausted. The sight of Victoria and her plate of fufu filled him with unspoken anger. "Babe, look at you," he snapped, unable to contain his frustration. "Do you even care how you look anymore? Each day you just get bigger. Is this what you want?" Victoria froze. Tears welled up, pain etched deeper into her soul. She turned away, silent as Chris stormed off. He didn't understand. Her weight wasn't laziness, but sorrow manifest. Weeks crawled by, heavy with tension. Then, a rare moment of hope arrived. Chris burst into their tiny living room, eyes shining, clutching official papers. "Babe," he exclaimed, almost vibrating with relief. "I registered my own building firm." "Finally, we have a chance." Victoria's face lit up with a smile that chased away months of sadness, if only for a moment. "I'm so proud," she said, clapping enthusiastically. Chris needed help. Still without funds for employees, he asked Victoria to be his receptionist. She agreed, longing for purpose after so many lonely days at home. Each morning, she ironed her old clothes, took her seat at their modest office, and waited for her husband. Their partnership rekindled something lost. Months later, after countless setbacks, Chris returned from a meeting radiant with triumph. "I won the hotel construction contract! The one I've chased for 3 years!" he announced, tears streaming down his face. Victoria screamed with joy, holding him tight. That night, hope banished their fears. They laughed, dreamt, and for the days passed, and Chris did not return. At first, Victoria tried to soothe her growing anxiety. Maybe Chris was simply busy. Surely, starting a new contract meant long hours, urgent meetings, unpredictable delays. But as dawn gave way to dusk and phones rang unanswered, Victoria's apprehension grew into terror. Each shadow in the living room seemed to whisper possibilities. Accident, betrayal, abandonment. Relatives and neighbors stopped by, their faces grave. "No one has seen Chris," they murmured, uncertain whether to console or judge. Victoria sat in silence, staring at the faded curtains, fingers tracing anxious patterns on the fabric of her dress. She forced herself to cook, to clean, to keep the semblance of life moving. But every task felt lifeless, a puppet mimicking routine in the absence of purpose. The nights stretched interminably long. Victoria barely slept, haunted by memories of happier days. Chris laughing at their inside jokes, helping her with paperwork, holding her through tears. Now, only the creak of the house and the distant calls of night birds kept her company. She whispered to God, bargaining, pleading, searching for answers that didn't come. By the end of the week, hope itself seemed a luxury she could no longer afford. One evening, a friend rushed in, eyes wide with urgency. "Victoria, have you checked your messages?" she asked, nervous fingers clutching her phone. Confused, Victoria scrolled through her inbox, her thumb trembling as she paused over a recent message. Her heart thudded. Could this be the news she'd prayed for? A video played, fuzzy and chaotic. There, on her tiny screen, stood Chris, but not in any hotel or building site. He was surrounded by unfamiliar faces, laughing, arms around a woman Victoria had never seen. It was filmed in another city entirely. Tears sprang to Victoria's eyes, not of relief, but of despair. Chris hadn't been hurt. He hadn't been kidnapped. He had left her for another woman. Waves of disbelief washed over her. The man she devoted her life to, sacrificed for, and suffered with, had simply turned the page and abandoned her. Memories of promises, Shared prayers and plans for their future twisted painfully inside her chest. The neighbors who once pitied her now pitied themselves for having believed in the couple's fairy tale. For days, Victoria lay motionless, phone beside her, neither eating nor sleeping, clutching the ghost of love that had betrayed her. Victoria's world contracted to the confines of her small bedroom. She lit her phone screen again and again, searching for explanations she knew would never come. Every message, every photograph of Chris with his new partner was another dagger to her heart. Where once she had fought depression, now she drowned in it. She barely spoke. The food she once sought for comfort now tasted like dust. Friends called, she ignored them. The only sound she made was the occasional sob as she wept silently in the night. Her appearance deteriorated. Once proud of her hair and style, she now let it mat and hang, indifferent to judgment. Every movement required immense effort, but she forced herself to keep going for the sake of dignity. She would not let the world see her crumble, at least not entirely. In a desperate bid to find closure, she texted Chris, her words sharp with pain and longing. "Why did you do this?" After all we shared, silence was his only reply. The days and their loneliness stretched into weeks. Gossip blossomed like weeds in the cracks of her life, neighbors whispering, speculating, some offering sympathy, some disdain. Despite the crushing grief, Victoria found herself at a crossroads. Surrender to sadness, or claw her way back from despair. Recovery is rarely a straight line. At first, Victoria lingered in the twilight of heartbreak, unsure if the sun would ever rise again in her soul. But deep inside, beneath the layers of sorrow, a tiny flame persisted, one born from the same resilience she carried since childhood. Each morning, she forced herself to get out of bed. Each day, she made the choice to fight, however feebly, for her own future. She began with small steps, a shower, a walk, a conversation with a neighbor. The world felt hostile, but still she persisted. One afternoon, Victoria stood before her mirror, staring at the stranger her pain had made. She remembered the girl she'd been, the hopeful wife, the strong friend. "I am still her," she whispered, voice trembling. "I am still here." Slowly, she started eating healthier meals and exercising, not for others, but for herself. The process was agonizingly slow, but the smallest progress felt like a victory. She read books about healing and self-worth, finding comfort in the words of others who had survived similar storms. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she laughed, surprised by the sound. With every passing day, the balance began to tip away from despair and towards hope. Over time, Victoria's transformation was undeniable. Her smile, once rare, returned not as an echo of what she'd lost, but as a blooming of new strength. Her neighbors noticed, this time with a different kind of whisper. "Look at Victoria. She survived. She's rebuilding." Friends, old and new, rallied around her. She found solace in their support, genuine kindness that soothed her battered heart. She volunteered at a local shelter, sharing her story with women who knew the taste of betrayal, loss, and renewal. Her words, raw, sincere, and brave, inspired others. She built a circle of trust, learning that vulnerability was not weakness, but power. Victoria's journey became a light for others still finding their way out of darkness. Though Chris's memory lingered, no longer did it haunt her nights. She forgave, not for his sake, but for her own. "It's part of me," she explained to her new friends, "but it does not define me." The more she loved herself, the less the past could hurt her. By now, Victoria was a warrior, scarred but not defeated, ready to chart a future entirely her own. Victoria's days grew brighter, not by magic, but through sheer determination. She took stock of her skills and started dreaming again, this time for herself. The business that Chris had once registered was just a name on a dusty piece of paper, forgotten in the chaos. But in those long evenings, alone with her thoughts, Victoria dared to envision reclaiming that business and redefining her future. She researched small-scale contracts for women entrepreneurs, devouring articles and webinars and asking questions whenever possible. She scribbled goals in a battered notebook, secure her own client, learn digital marketing, expand her skill set. These weren't lofty dreams fueled by naive optimism, but grounded steps taken by someone who had lost everything and learned to rebuild from scraps. With her neighbors watching, some supportive, others skeptical, Victoria walked to the city municipal building to inquire about small business assistance. The official behind the desk, an elderly man with knowing eyes, listened as she shared her plan and her history. "It's not easy," he warned, "but you have fire in your eyes. Don't let paperwork snuff it out." Victoria smiled, feeling the flicker of hope growing stronger inside her. She left the office with a handful of forms, instructions, and the promise of doors waiting to be opened if she was patient and persistent. Every signature was an act of faith. Every completed step, a small victory reclaimed from her losses. Week by week, Victoria attended meetings for women kicking off new ventures. Here, in rooms filled with hope and grit, she found a community that felt like home. The stories she heard mirrored her own: betrayals, bankruptcies, heartbreaks, and yet every woman radiated a strength that felt contagious. One day, after sharing her own journey aloud, Victoria was approached by Felicia, a dynamic local businesswoman, renowned for her compassion and integrity. Felicia introduced Victoria to a circle of women who pooled resources, shared contacts, and cheered each other's progress. They understood the language of resilience, each one fluent in survival. Together, they redefined success, not just as profit or recognition, but as the ability to rise again and again after being knocked down. Victoria started working part-time with Felicia, learning the ins and outs of procurement, customer relations, and navigating the occasionally hostile business world. She thrived in this environment, leaping over obstacles that once felt insurmountable. Felicia saw Victoria's perseverance and soon trusted her with more responsibility. "You fight for every inch," Felicia affirmed with a grin. "Women like you change the game." Victoria's heart swelled with pride. The raw grief of betrayal faded further into the background as new relationships soothed old wounds. She found purpose in uplifting others and herself. Months melted into one another, and Victoria's self-worth became her anchor. Every morning, she reminded herself of the battles she'd survived. She posted affirmations around her small apartment, on the bathroom mirror, the kitchen fridge, the door leading outside. "You are enough. Your past does not dictate your future. Rise, even when it hurts." Her appearance began to change, not out of spite toward Chris, or to answer the critics, but because she felt alive again. She chose health over comfort, exercise over inertia, connection over isolation. She signed up for fitness classes with some of the women from Felicia's group, and slowly her body grew stronger. Clothes fit differently. Her hair regained its sheen. The haunted look of sorrow ebbed away. Neighbors who once mocked her with comments remembered Victoria's fall, but now marveled at her resurgence. Word spread through the streets. "Victoria has found her footing. She's relentless." Some were inspired, others secretly jealous. But Victoria knew that her journey was for herself alone. She also rekindled old hobbies: painting, singing, reading. I'd forgotten how much art could heal. It was as though each brushstroke, each song, patched up a bit of her broken heart. She let beauty create space for happiness where pain had lived for far too long. One Sunday, in church, Victoria spotted Chris sitting at the back, head bowed. Time had changed him too. His face drawn, clothes less sharp than before. He looked up. Their eyes meeting for the first time since his disappearance. For a heartbeat, the past threatened to flood her with anger and sadness. But Victoria gathered herself, choosing the strength that survived beneath all the wreckage. After the service, Chris approached, voice quiet and unsure. "Victoria, He hesitated, searching for words, heavy with regret. "I'm sorry. I know nothing I say can fix what I did." Tears tinged his voice, contrition both real and heartbreaking. "I was selfish, weak. I broke us." Victoria listened, her heart steady. The woman who stood before Chris was not the same as the one left behind. She had healed, grown, found love within herself. "I'll forgive you," she said simply. "Not because I condone what happened, but because I want peace. I'm moving forward, Chris, truly." Chris nodded, shame swimming in his eyes. Their conversation ended the way their romance did, not with bitterness, but the quiet dignity of closure. The weight of forgiveness made space for new beginnings. From that day, Victoria felt a new kind of freedom. She channeled her pain into mentoring others, sharing her story at shelters, support groups, and online platforms. Her voice resonated with those who felt lost, helping them find the courage to fight for their own futures. The narrative she crafted was never about perfect endings, but about resilience and hope despite wounds. Victoria's business began to thrive. She landed small contracts for office renovations and community spaces, earning enough to sustain herself and even support her family. She poured lessons learned into every project. Lessons bloom, reminding employees and partners that empathy had a place alongside ambition. Sometimes she glanced at her old wedding ring, now resting in a box filled with mementos, a symbol not just of love lost, but of battles won. Her humble apartment transformed with new colors, photographs of happy moments, and friends who filled her space with laughter. Victoria's legacy was not her pain, but her example, that broken hearts can be mended, that futures can bloom again, and that self-love is the root of every healing. There's a special kind of triumph that comes after surviving hardship, a quiet joy that permeates everyday routines. For Victoria, joy wasn't an explosion of happiness or some dramatic transformation. It was a gentle unfolding, day by day, as she rediscovered the beauty in ordinary moments. She began to wake up each morning with an unhurried sense of peace, no longer haunted by uncertainty, but guided by a new kind of hope. She adopted routines that boosted her spirit, sunrise walks through the city's tree-lined streets, listening to birdsong and savoring the promise of each dawn. These walks became meditative, giving her space to honor both the pain she'd endured and the blessings she'd found. At home, she learned to cook new dishes, exotic, vibrant recipes she'd never tried before. Cooking transformed from a means of distraction or self-comfort into a celebration of creativity and agency. Each weekend, Victoria hosted small gatherings for her circle of friends, women who understood her journey intimately. They shared laughter, encouragement, and sometimes tears, but always with a sense of unity. These connections were her lifeline, reminders that the love she'd lost could be replaced by deep friendships and a wider sense of belonging. Slowly, the color returned to Victoria's world, the muted tones of grief replaced by bright, bold hues of perseverance and newfound excitement. Her apartment reflected this transformation. Fresh flowers by the window, artwork she created herself, affirmations taped to cupboards. Even on the hard days, and there were still hard days, Victoria held on to her reclaimed joy, refusing to let what she had lost overshadow what she had left to gain. Word of Victoria's revival spread beyond her neighborhood, reaching the wider community and inspiring silent admirers to seek her advice. Young women approached her, hoping to hear how she had weathered the storm and emerged whole. Old acquaintances expressed guilt for their earlier judgments, offering apologies and gestures of goodwill. The same city that once felt lonely and unforgiving now embraced Victoria, acknowledging the strength she had displayed under pressure. Her work as a businesswoman became more than profit and contracts. It was mentorship, advocacy, and example. She joined public forums to discuss women's rights, the mental health impact of life-altering losses, and strategies for economic empowerment. Her words were not polished speeches, but honest testimony. She spoke from experience without sugarcoating pain, and that gave others permission to be vulnerable themselves. Neighbors rallied around her initiatives. A network of volunteers emerged from her gatherings, helping to renovate community spaces and support families in crisis. Victoria initiated workshops on resilience, inviting experts to teach techniques for healing and self-advocacy. Each session ended with hugs and promises, sparking thousands of small acts of courage among attendees. Victoria never lost sight of her roots. Her story was deeply intertwined with her identity as a Black woman, a survivor, and a leader among her peers. The pride she took in her heritage became an engine for greater achievement. Her personal victory, a mosaic of the collective strength of her nation and community. Where once she had been pitied, now she was celebrated. Victoria was never one to erase her history, no matter how painful. She honored the children she lost, lighting candles on special anniversaries, whispering prayers for their memory. Each gesture was filled not with regret, but with acceptance, anchoring her journey in sacred remembrance. Chris remained a distant memory, no longer a source of rage or longing, but a closed chapter in a much richer book of life. She collected mementos, ultrasound photographs, old birthday cards from when she and Chris still believed in their shared future. Notes exchanged during their courtship. These keepsakes were kept in a small chest, a private monument to the years that shaped her. On certain quiet afternoons, Victoria would open the box, touch each piece gently, and reflect on how far she'd come. Rather than being imprisoned by sorrow, Victoria chose to use her history as a foundation. "Your pain is the root of your power," she reminded women at her workshops. "If you can face it, you can heal from it. And when you heal, you can change your world." She became a steward of hope, honoring the wisdom that only comes from walking through fire. The community respected her vulnerability, seeing in her story an undeniable proof that wounds, however deep, do not have to define the rest of one's life. By staying open to the lessons of her past, Victoria built a bridge for others to cross from grief to growth. With each passing season, Victoria grew more confident in her ability to shape her own destiny. She expanded her business, hired staff from the shelter she once volunteered at, and invested in young entrepreneurs. Financial security, once a distant dream, became her reality. She began traveling, visiting neighboring cities for conferences, exposing herself to new ideas and cultures, all while remaining true to her roots. Victoria started writing. Her memoirs were shared online, resonating with thousands of women across the continent who saw themselves in her words. Publishers noticed her unique voice, and soon she was invited to speak at bigger platforms, her story inspiring change well beyond the borders of her city. Lessons bloom. Through these travels and encounters, Victoria collected fresh dreams. She aspired not only to wealth or fame, but to create opportunities for others, especially those who felt overlooked or marginalized. I want to give what I never had, a safe space to heal, learn, and build, she declared at one conference, her voice unwavering, filled with the conviction of someone who had rebuilt from nothing. Every project she undertook was layered with her signature blend of empathy and excellence. Her impact rippled outward, touching lives she might never meet directly. In every email, handshake, and speech, Victoria stamped her story, proof that new beginnings are possible, even after devastation. Today, Victoria stands as a testament to human resilience, the kind that grows deeper and more luminous with every storm survived. She is no longer defined by betrayal, grief, or struggle, but by the choices she made to rise again and again. Her journey echoes across generations, reminding women everywhere that their scars are testament to strength. Lessons bloom, not failure. Victoria's laughter fills rooms. Her presence brings comfort and inspiration. She is a pillar in her community, a trusted mentor, a friend whose empathy has healed countless hearts. Her legacy proves that pain shared honestly can catalyze transformation, that loving oneself is the beginning of loving the world anew. So if you find yourself in the depths of despair, remember Victoria's story, a narrative that began with heartbreak but blossomed into hope. The very same hands that once buried dreams now build entire futures. The heart that mourned is the same heart that now sings, unstoppable. Victoria's story dares us all to believe, no matter what you have lost, you can create, claim, and live a beautiful life still. If her story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join our family of resilient souls. Your healing is possible. Your future starts now.